some commercials, though. So while this game was pretty much a blowout, many people had their attention on the commercials. Now, paying for a spot during the big game means big bucks, and hopefully it worked. We're talking now with Del Esparza, president of Esparza Advertising, to find out just that. So, Del, you've been all over this, analyzing the things, watching them just as a, just like a regular Joe, watching, being entertained. So what do we think about this year's batch of commercials?
Well, if I was going to define this year's batch of commercials, I would call it family friendly.
Okay.
It was about 10 years ago, there was a wardrobe malfunction. I don't know if you remember good old Janet Jackson.
It was 10 years ago. Yeah, that's right.
It's really, and today, yesterday's commercials during the Super Bowl were very family friendly. A lot of America Pride, a lot of families, even interracial families. There was a controversy about a Cheerios commercial that played very, very well yesterday. So a lot of family-friendly commercials for that $4 million investment.
Right. So do you think there's one reason that it tilted that way in terms of, the way the marketplace is right now? Why do you think advertisers were going with that family-friendly vibe?
Well, I talked to a lot of my employees at Esparza Advertising, and we said, okay, what's the trend that's taking place? And one of the things over the last few years that have happened is more anthem type of commercials. So more storytelling, if you will. And if you recall, Chrysler and imported from Detroit was a big anthem spot, and a big story. And so those kind of spots have really taken a life of its own and have resonated a lot with the viewers watching the Super Bowl. And so this year you saw a lot more of those long form commercials.
Yeah, you sure did.
A lot more of those stories, a lot more of an kind of an anthem or let's pick you up and be proud of America type of an approach.
You also saw a lot of the sort of episodic pieces. The Budweiser commercial with Arnold Schwarzenegger was a two-parter.
Yes.
Sort of sets you up, it teases you, and then it says stick around, which I think to a certain extent would be effective because you want to find out what happens at the end of the story.
Well, it was a Bud Light,
Bud Light
commercial,
right,
yeah. And actually I thought that was it was a little odd. Normally Bud Light does very, very well tapping into the humor bone. This was kind of like an episodic story of this guy in an epic night out. I thought it was a little choppy, a little odd, and then anytime you see Arnold Schwarzenegger in a wig playing ping pong.
We were saying that can't be cheap. Getting Schwarzenegger and then getting him to don that outfit,
Absolutely.
probably not cheap. We also have the Doritos commercials, which to me are always, they could be really gross or they could be really funny. This one kind of, we were talking about it on Friday, is a little bit of both.
Yeah, it definitely was disturbing, to say the least. I certainly didn't like it. And then you had GoDaddy. GoDaddy ranked really poorly, in the eyes of the consumer.
Did it really? Okay.
It typically does. Now, this is the one that ranked #1 in the eyes of the consumer, and also #1 in my eyes as well.
Really? Okay, so that one was your favorite,
That was the Budweiser one with the Clydesdale and the puppy. You have the Doberman Pinscher and the Chihuahua hybrid, which actually ranked very, very high, but it's an Audi commercial. And I think this is an example of how something can be too funny and too creative and miss the mark.
And make you forget what it's promoting.
You forget that it's about Audi. People might recall the commercial, they might think it's funny, as a funny dog, but if they're not able to connect the fact that it's an Audi and why Audi over other cars, well, then they miss the mark.
Right. Well, so let's talk numbers. You've got some overnight numbers in terms of people watching, the effectiveness. So what are we looking at?
Numbers are strong, especially here in New Mexico. 3 out of every 4 televisions that were on during the Super Bowl were watching the Super Bowl. There's only one television. I don't know who was watching something else, but there was only one television that was on watching something else.
Right.
So it's about 75%.
Is there anything else on during that time?
Actually? Who knows? I think the Puppy Bowl.
The Puppy Bowl. That's right.
On.
That's what they were watching.
That's exactly
the Puppy
what it
Bowl.
was.
Yeah, that's great. So they did really well, and you were also saying in this market it did really well, and you think a lot of that also has to do with our proximity to Colorado.
Right.
Denver, New Mexico, we don't have our own NFL team, so it's this city really is either Cowboys, Broncos, and of course there are other teams, but those are the two dominant NFL teams in this area.
We did some research prior to the Super Bowl. Dallas ranks high in the state, #1 team in the state as far as who the state follows. Denver's a close second. And you get into Arizona, Arizona's the third. So because Denver is so well liked because of its proximity, especially when you get into northern New Mexico, it was very well liked. So the numbers are strong for the state of New Mexico. Nationwide, they trended about 62%.
Really?
62% of TVs were watching the Super Bowl. But again, in New Mexico, almost 75% were. And it didn't really drop off that much going into the fourth quarter,
Well, that's
which
good.
was the big risk because it
Yeah.
was such a blowout.
Yeah,
People,
absolutely.
You know, you think would start changing the channel.
Yeah, and a lot of people might not, because everyone was predicting this to be such a tight
Right.
game. So, advertisers, I'm sure, did not see this
Right.
this sort of lopsided thing, which has to affect their decision on whether or not they're going to pay to play, they're going to get in
Right.
and do this. But that's good to know that people just sort of stuck it out. Maybe they were wanting to see how far Seattle would get ahead.
Well, anytime you have Peyton Manning too
Yeah.
as a quarterback, you never really know what to expect. And you kept, I know where at my house we kept thinking they've got to come back.
Yeah,
I mean, he's such an
something's gonna
incredible quarterback. And we sat there and watched the commercials too and enjoyed the commercials as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there were a lot of really great ones. You say your favorite, the puppy love. My favorite was the Tim Tebow. I love the Tim
Yeah.
Tebow ones. I thought it was great. Made fun of himself. Thought it was really good. And like you were saying, it connected to the product.
Yeah.
No contracts, and that's T-Mobile's big thing.
Right.
So there, from an advertising standpoint, I thought it was very effective because I
Right.
can say not the Tim Tebow commercial, the T-Mobile commercial.
Absolutely.
And that hits the brand.
T-Mobile has a new CEO that's really a rebel out there in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and he's really pushing the envelope. And the whole no contract has been a big push, and something that's novel for that category.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, the fact that Tim Tebow doesn't have a contract as well, the connection was right there.
It's
Plus,
great.
he's a somewhat of a polarizing figure,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people do like him, and he's making fun of himself, so
Yeah.
it makes him more endearing. I thought it was a very well done spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Dale, thank you so much for
Always a
your time, my
pleasure.
friend.